This presentation will be on a new product from Riverbed called Riverbed Granite. Having been involved in the data consolidation and WAN optimization market for several years, there are a couple of questions that typically come about when we talk about data consolidation. And those two typical questions are, what do you do with applications that don't scale well across the WAN if we're going to consolidate all that data and force people to access that data across the WAN? What about those applications that don't scale well? And the second and probably biggest or most important question that we hear, what happens if the WAN goes down? Now all the data from the remote office side has been sent to the data center. If that WAN connection goes down, our remote users can't access that data. So we're going to address each of these two questions with Riverbed Granite. So our agenda today is, I want to just very briefly explain how data is consolidated through WAN acceleration. We don't sacrifice the speed for those remote users. They're still able to go across those WAN connections and be just as productive accessing data from the data center versus their remote office server. And then once we add Riverbed Granite to the mix, how does that data get projected back out to that remote office without a physical server being in play? And then lastly, I want to just briefly discuss how you can try this on your own network through CSG's Proof of Concept program. So very briefly, when we talk about data consolidation utilizing Riverbed's WAN accelerators, essentially what we're doing is we're placing a steelhead appliance on your existing connections for each of the remote offices, and then again at your data center side. And essentially what this allows us to do is take the data that you're storing on your remote servers today and simply consolidate that back to the data center. So your users, instead of accessing the data locally here, your users will go across this connection. Acceleration is provided by the steelhead appliances, and they'll simply access the data from the data center server, and they'll feel that all-in-one room feel. So it'll be nearly as fast as accessing that from the local server. When we say nearly as fast, we're talking production level quality speeds. For the IT staff though, this creates a much easier network for them to manage, because now our data is stored in only one place. We can do our backups from one location. Now if we were looking at backing up to the cloud, we were looking at some off-site backup, now all of our data is stored here in one location. It makes it much easier for us to manage all of that data. Because we had physical servers at the remote office side already, what we would do a lot of times is just leave those servers in place and have our users authenticate to the network from the local server. You may set up print queues. There are some services that just make sense for us to have local. That keeps additional traffic off these lines and makes everything run a little bit smoother. So when we're talking about adding Riverbed Granite to the mix, essentially what we're doing is we're adding a license for Granite to our existing Steelhead. Now if you're on the new Steelhead platform, the Steelhead EX, it's simply a license that we add to that existing Steelhead EX. If you're an existing Riverbed customer with an older platform, we can simply install a Granite only box, what we call the Granite Edge, out to each of the remote offices. Now these boxes here also come with the Virtual Services Platform, or VSP license. Essentially what this allows us to do is for you to take your license of Windows Server and install that on the appliance itself. So you'll have all the benefit of having a server, a virtual server running on this appliance without having to have a physical box running that server software, a separate box. We simply consolidate that into the Steelhead appliance, and now we have a virtual server running here on the appliance. At the data center side, we are adding this Granite Core module. Granite Core is simply going to manage the data that's here at the data center that we want to push out to each of these remote offices. So think of this as we've taken the server, we've physically brought that server back here to the data center, and now we want Granite Core to take the information on that server and project that back out here to each remote office. So it kind of looks like this graphically. Now keep in mind that these are not shared what we call Lunz or data stores. They're individual for each remote office. If you have applications that require multi-use access, you would simply utilize Steelhead's technology. For example, here in the AEC industry, there's a product called Autodesk Revit, which requires multiple people to be able to access a single Revit model. And we would simply just store that here at the data center, and our users, instead of accessing that from the local Granite Edge, they would do like they do today, just go across that existing connection and access it directly here on the server. But for everything else that's not multi-access, we can have Granite Core manage those Lunz that we push out here to each of these remote offices, and now our remote users are accessing that data from the local Granite Edge. So if this line goes down, these people are still working. They still have access to all of their data. In the background, Granite Edge is communicating with Granite Core to ensure that all information that's been changed is being updated back here at the data center. So our IT staff is still getting the benefit of having only one place to manage that data, and then we're allowing Granite Core, in this case at the data center, to send that information to each remote office so that their information is their local. And then through WAN acceleration, this replication that's going on, or this updating that's going on, we're getting the benefit of WAN optimization on that as well. Should this line goes down, these users are still working. When the line comes back up, Granite Edge and Granite Core communicate together to ensure that all of the data is updated here at the data center side. And essentially that's really what Granite does or brings to the table here in this data consolidation environment. So briefly, why Riverbed and CSG? There really is no other solution out there that's competitive with Granite and what it does. And Granite is done for a specific reason, and that was those two questions that I posed at the beginning of the presentation. And really the biggest concern is, what do those remote users do if that WAN connection goes down? And Granite specifically addresses that workflow issue. I also like to point out that this is a homegrown solution. It's not acquired technology that's been band-aided together here. The Granite and the Steelheads are both homegrown from Riverbed, and I think that's important because it provides stability. We at CSG, a number of our folks got involved with Riverbed back in 2005. We have a vast array of experience and deployments across the United States. So certainly we feel like we bring a lot to the table here in terms of our experience. Our proof of concept program is designed to allow you to have this installed on your network. Now, because we don't set up special tunnels or anything like that, we don't have to tear your network apart. These appliances will sit physically between the router and the switch, the WAN accelerators, and then we simply add Granite to that. So we don't do we don't do any major changes to your network. Typically we install these over a lunch, or we can do it after hours. But the point here is that you get to see this on your network. You run it for 30 days. If you like it, you can keep those appliances. We'll simply send you an invoice based on the quote that you had approved to get this process going. Or if you're looking just to put it in next year's budget, but you want to kind of see how this works anyway, you can still use the proof of concept program. At the end of that 30-day testing period, you simply unplug everything, put it back in its original box, and send it to us. And there's no charge for anything, but it gives you the benefit of having seen this, and you'll know exactly how well this works on your own network, not in a lab environment. So with that, my contact information is posted here. If you'd like to get started with a proof of concept, or you'd like to have a little bit more robust presentation or ask any specific questions or talk about your own configuration, please feel free to give me a call here on my direct line, which is listed, or you're also welcome to send me an email and I'll get back in touch with you very quickly. I appreciate the time and thank you.